Ladies and gentlemen, there is something powerful about prayer. It's more than just words spoken into the air. It's a conversation with God. It's a moment where faith meets action, where we lay down our burdens, and where we trust that our words are heard. Prayer is an act of faith because it requires believing in something beyond what we can see or immediately experience. When a person prays, they are not just speaking words into empty space. They are engaging in a spiritual connection with God. This act alone is a demonstration of faith, as it acknowledges that there is a higher power who listens, cares, and responds. Trusting in prayer means understanding that even if there is no visible or immediate response, it does not mean that the prayer has gone unheard or unanswered. Faith is about believing without seeing, and prayer is one of the most profound expressions of that belief. Many people struggle with the concept of faith in prayer because they expect instant results. In today's fast-paced world where answers are often just a click away, waiting for something unseen can feel frustrating. However, prayer operates in a realm beyond human timing and logic. It requires patience and the assurance that God is working even when there are no immediate signs of progress. This is where faith plays a crucial role. It is easy to trust in things that are tangible, but true faith is displayed when one continues to pray despite uncertainty. The Bible is filled with examples of people who demonstrated unwavering faith in their prayers. One well-known story is that of Abraham, who prayed and waited for years for the promise of a son. Even when circumstances seemed impossible, he continued to trust that God would fulfill his word. This kind of faith is what prayer demands. It is not about demanding immediate results, but about trusting the process, knowing that God's plan is greater than our understanding. Prayer also requires faith, because it is an act of surrender. When a person prays, they are placing their worries, desires, and needs into God's hands. This act of surrender is not always easy because human nature seeks control. People want to fix things on their own, to find solutions within their own capabilities. But prayer teaches reliance on something beyond human effort. It is an acknowledgement that while we have limitations, God does not. Faith in prayer means believing that He is in control, even when life feels uncertain or overwhelming. Another reason prayer is an act of faith is that it requires believing in the unseen. The answers to prayers often manifest in ways that are unexpected. Sometimes they come in the form of peace rather than a change in circumstances. Other times they unfold gradually, shaping events in ways that could not have been predicted. This is why trusting in prayer requires an open heart and a willingness to see beyond the immediate. Just because an answer does not come in the way one expects does not mean it is not there. God answers prayers in ways that align with His wisdom and purpose, not necessarily in ways that fit human expectations. Faith in prayer is also demonstrated through persistence. When a person continues to pray, even when it seems like nothing is happening, it is an act of trust. It shows that they believe God is listening, even in silence. Many people give up on prayer when they do not see immediate results, but faith means continuing to pray, knowing that every prayer matters. The Bible speaks of a widow who persistently went to a judge for justice. Though the judge was reluctant, her persistence led to her request being granted. This story illustrates the power of continual prayer. Faith is not just about praying once and expecting instant results. It is about remaining steadfast, knowing that God's timing is perfect. Prayer also strengthens faith. The more a person prays, the more their faith grows. When prayers are answered, even in small ways, they serve as reminders that God is present and active. Even when prayers seem unanswered, continued prayer deepens trust and reliance on God. It shifts the focus from personal desires to a deeper relationship with Him. Over time, prayer becomes less about seeking specific answers and more about developing a connection with God. Faith in prayer also means accepting that not every prayer will be answered in the way one hopes. Sometimes the answer is different from what was expected. Other times, the answer is a clear no or not yet. This does not mean that the prayer was ignored. Rather, it means that God has a different plan. Trusting in prayer means believing that His ways are higher than ours and that His answers, even when they are not what we want, are ultimately for our good. Prayer is an act of faith because it requires believing in God's love, wisdom, and timing. It is an exercise in trust, patience, and surrender. It challenges people to look beyond their immediate desires and place their confidence in something greater. True faith in prayer is not about getting what one wants, but about trusting that God knows what is best. When a person prays with faith, they open themselves to God's guidance and allow His will to shape their lives in ways that go beyond human understanding. God's timing is perfect, even when it does not align with human expectations. Many people pray with the hope of receiving an immediate answer, but often the response does not come as quickly as they desire. This delay can lead to frustration, doubt, and even the temptation to stop praying altogether. However, understanding that God operates on a timeline far beyond human comprehension is essential to developing trust in prayer. What may seem like a delay from a human perspective is, in reality, a carefully orchestrated part of God's greater plan. One of the biggest struggles in prayer is the uncertainty of when and how an answer will come. People naturally want things to happen on their schedule, and waiting can be difficult. This is because human nature craves control, and when prayers go unanswered for a period of time, it can feel as though things are out of control. However, God sees the full picture. He knows what is best, and He knows the perfect time to bring answers to prayers. His delays are not denials. They are opportunities for growth, preparation, and transformation. In many cases, the delay in answering a prayer is a time of preparation. God may not be answering a specific request because the person praying is not yet ready to receive it. For example, someone may be praying for a new job, a promotion, or a financial breakthrough, but if they are not yet equipped with the skills, wisdom, or discipline to handle that blessing, it could do more harm than good. Instead of providing an immediate answer, God may use the waiting period to refine character, build patience, and develop the qualities necessary to handle the blessing when it arrives. There are also times when God's timing is about aligning circumstances in ways that cannot be seen in the moment. Many times, a person prays for something, but other factors must fall into place before the answer can be fully realized. Consider someone praying for the right life partner. They may feel ready for marriage, but their future spouse might still be undergoing personal growth and transformation. If God were to bring them together too soon, it might not lead to a successful relationship. His timing ensures that everything is in its proper place before granting the request. Another reason God's timing is perfect is that He often has something even greater in store than what a person is praying for. Sometimes people ask for something specific, but God, in His infinite wisdom, knows that there is something far better suited for them. If prayers were answered immediately without His divine planning, people would settle for less than what God intends for them. The delay is not a punishment, but a way of ensuring that what is received is truly the best. Faith is tested in the waiting period. Trusting in God's timing requires believing that He is working behind the scenes, even when there are no visible signs of progress. This trust is what strengthens a person's faith. Waiting on God builds endurance, patience, and reliance on Him rather than on personal efforts. It shifts the focus from simply receiving an answer to deepening the relationship with God. The waiting period can be a time of spiritual growth, teaching dependence on God rather than on personal understanding. Biblical stories provide countless examples of God's perfect timing. One of the most well-known is the story of Joseph. He had dreams of greatness and leadership, but instead of seeing those dreams come true immediately, he faced years of hardship, betrayal, and imprisonment. It would have been easy for Joseph to lose faith and assume that God had forgotten him. But in reality, God was using each challenge to prepare him for his future role. When the time was right, Joseph was elevated to a position of power in Egypt, and he was able to save many lives, including his own family. Had God answered his prayers earlier, before he was ready, Joseph might not have been equipped to handle the responsibility. The story of Lazarus is another example of God's perfect timing. When Lazarus was sick, his sisters, Mary and Martha, sent word to Jesus, expecting him to come immediately and heal their brother. However, Jesus delayed his arrival, and by the time he reached them, Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. To those around him, it seemed as though Jesus had come too late, but in reality, his timing was intentional. Instead of simply healing Lazarus, Jesus performed an even greater miracle, raising him from the dead. Had Jesus arrived earlier, the true power of God would not have been revealed in such a dramatic way. These stories illustrate that God's timing is never random or accidental. Every moment of waiting serves a purpose. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, God is orchestrating events in ways that cannot yet be seen. What feels like a delay is often God's way of preparing something far greater than what was originally asked for. Trusting in His timing means letting go of the need for immediate results and believing that when the answer comes, it will be at the right time and in the best way possible. Prayer is not just about asking for things. It is about building a deep and meaningful relationship with God. Many people approach prayer only when they need something, treating it as a transaction rather than a conversation. However, true prayer is not just a request list. It is an opportunity to connect with God on a personal level, to seek His guidance, to express gratitude, and to grow in faith. Just as relationships with friends and family require communication, trust, and consistency, a relationship with God is nurtured through regular and sincere prayer. When people pray, they are not just speaking into the air, they are engaging in a dialogue with the Creator of the universe. This relationship is strengthened when prayer is consistent and heartfelt, rather than occasional and routine. Just as spending time with a friend deepens a bond, spending time in prayer deepens one's relationship with God. This is why prayer should not be limited to moments of crisis or need. It should be a daily habit, a way of life. The more one prays, the more they become attuned to God's presence, recognizing His guidance in every aspect of life. Many people struggle with the idea of prayer because they do not always see immediate results. They may feel as though their prayers are unheard or unanswered. But building a relationship with God through prayer is not about getting instant solutions. It is about growing in trust and understanding. Prayer is not about changing God's mind. It is about aligning one's heart with His will. When a person prays regularly, they begin to see beyond their immediate desires and start to understand God's greater plan. This shift in perspective allows them to pray not just for what they want, but for what is truly best according to God's wisdom. A strong relationship with God through prayer also brings peace and strength in difficult times. Life is filled with challenges, uncertainties, and disappointments, but those who have a consistent prayer life are better equipped to handle them. They understand that they are not alone in their struggles. Even when circumstances are difficult, prayer serves as a reminder that God is in control. This assurance does not necessarily remove problems, but it provides the strength to endure them. Knowing that God is listening and that He cares makes even the heaviest burdens feel lighter. Gratitude is another essential aspect of prayer that strengthens one's relationship with God. It is easy to focus only on requests and forget to acknowledge the blessings already received. A healthy prayer life includes thanksgiving, recognizing the many ways God has already provided, protected, and guided. Gratitude in prayer shifts the focus from what is lacking to what has been given. This change in mindset fosters a deeper appreciation for God's goodness and faithfulness, reinforcing trust in His continued presence and provision. Prayer also serves as a means of self-reflection and personal growth. When a person prays sincerely, they become more aware of their thoughts, actions, and intentions. They begin to examine their hearts, seeking guidance on how to live according to God's will. This self-awareness leads to transformation, as prayer not only connects a person to God, but also helps them become the person they are meant to be. It is in moments of prayer that people often find clarity, conviction, and the courage to make the right choices in life. One of the most powerful aspects of prayer is that it creates intimacy with God. In human relationships, the deepest connections come from honest and open communication. The same is true with God. When people pray with sincerity, sharing their fears, hopes, and struggles, they develop a closeness with Him that cannot be found elsewhere. They begin to understand that they are truly loved and valued, not because of what they do, but because of who they are in God's eyes. This realization brings a sense of security and belonging that nothing in the world can provide. Prayer also builds faith. The more a person prays and sees God's hand at work, the more their faith grows. Even when answers are delayed or come in unexpected ways, continued prayer strengthens trust in God's plan. Faith is not about seeing, it is about believing. Every prayer, whether answered immediately or not, serves to deepen faith, teaching patience and reliance on God's perfect wisdom. A strong relationship with God through prayer also impacts the way a person interacts with others. When someone spends time in prayer, seeking God's guidance and wisdom, they become more patient, compassionate, and understanding. Their perspective shifts from self-centered concerns to a greater awareness of the needs of others. This change is reflected in their actions as they begin to treat others with the same love and kindness they experience through their connection with God. Through consistent and heartfelt prayer, a person experiences transformation in their life. They find peace in uncertainty, strength in difficulties, gratitude in blessings, and a deeper understanding of God's love. The journey of faith is not about having all the answers, but about trusting the one who does. Prayer is the foundation of that trust, the key to growing in relationship with God, and the pathway to a life filled with purpose and meaning. Faith is the foundation of effective prayer. Without faith, prayer becomes an empty ritual rather than a meaningful conversation with God. Faith is the belief that God hears prayers, cares about them, and responds in the best possible way. Many people struggle with doubt when they pray, questioning whether their words make any difference. However, the power of prayer is not found in the words themselves, but in the faith behind them. Trusting in prayer means believing that God is actively listening and that his response will always be in alignment with his wisdom and love. One of the greatest challenges in faith-based prayer is overcoming uncertainty. It is natural to wonder if a prayer is being heard, especially when there is no immediate answer. Doubt can creep in, making people feel as though their prayers are ineffective or unimportant. However, faith is about trusting beyond what is visible. It means holding on to the belief that even when nothing seems to be changing, God is still at work. Faith does not depend on feelings or circumstances, but on the unchanging nature of God. Prayer requires not only faith that God listens, but also faith that he knows what is best. Sometimes people pray for specific outcomes and become discouraged when things do not go as expected. However, faith-based prayer acknowledges that God's understanding is far greater than human understanding. What seems like an unanswered prayer may actually be God's way of redirecting a person towards something better. Trusting in prayer means surrendering control and believing that God's plan is ultimately for good, even if it is not immediately clear. There are times when faith in prayer is tested, especially during hardships. When facing loss, illness, or disappointment, it can be difficult to maintain confidence in prayer. Some may wonder why their prayers are not being answered in the way they desire. But true faith does not waver in difficult times. It grows stronger. Prayer is not just about asking God to change situations. It is also about asking him to change hearts, to provide peace, and to strengthen endurance. Faith in prayer is knowing that even in the hardest moments, God is present and working. Faith in prayer also requires persistence. Many times, people pray once or twice for something and then give up when they do not see immediate results. But faith is demonstrated through perseverance. Continuing to pray, even when answers seem delayed, shows trust in God's timing and plan. The Bible speaks of people who prayed for years before receiving an answer, and their faith was strengthened through the waiting process. Persistent prayer is not about convincing God to act. It is about showing unwavering belief in his promises. Another aspect of faith in prayer is believing that God's power is limitless. Sometimes people place limitations on what they think God can do. They pray for small things, but hesitate to pray for something big, fearing that it may be too much to ask. But true faith does not set boundaries on God's ability. The same God who created the universe, performed miracles, and transformed lives is the same God who listens to prayers today. Trusting in prayer means believing that nothing is impossible for him. Faith also plays a role in praying with expectation. When a person truly believes in the power of prayer, they pray with confidence. Instead of doubting whether something will happen, they trust that God is already at work. This expectation does not mean demanding specific results, but rather believing that God is faithful and will answer in the right way. Prayer that is filled with faith is not hesitant. It is bold, trusting that God is always in control. Faith in prayer leads to peace. Many people struggle with anxiety, worrying about the future and the challenges they face. But when someone truly trusts in prayer, they experience peace that goes beyond understanding. Instead of carrying burdens alone, they place them in God's hands, knowing that he is fully capable of handling them. This faith allows them to rest in the assurance that no matter what happens, God is still in control. When a person fully trusts in prayer, their outlook on life changes. They stop relying solely on their own strength and begin relying on God's power. They pray with confidence, knowing that their words do not disappear into emptiness, but are heard by a loving and powerful God. They are not discouraged by delays because they trust in God's perfect timing. They do not let doubt take over because they believe in God's faithfulness. This kind of trust transforms not only prayer, but also the way a person lives, bringing a deeper sense of purpose, peace, and joy. Trusting in your prayers is about more than just speaking words. It is about building a deep relationship with God, understanding His perfect timing, and believing in His wisdom even when answers are not immediate. Prayer is not just a request, but a connection, a way to strengthen faith, and a means to find peace in the midst of uncertainty. When you trust in your prayers, you are placing your life in the hands of a loving and all-knowing God who always works for your good. Even when the road seems difficult, faith in prayer gives you the strength to persevere, the patience to wait, and the confidence to know that God's plan is greater than anything you could imagine. May you continue to pray with faith, trust with confidence, and live with the assurance that your prayers are heard. Keep believing, keep seeking, and keep trusting, because God is always working in ways beyond what you can see. Good luck on your journey of faith, and may your prayers bring you closer to the life you are meant to live. Thank you for your time, and may you be blessed with wisdom, peace, and unwavering trust in the power of prayer.